Welcome to the Denverse. I'm Derek, and today we have our Chicago correspondent, Aaron Davidson, joining us on the phone. Welcome to the podcast, Aaron.
Thank you so much.
So, from Chicago, how do you feel like things are looking in the world of Denver sports right now?
Well, there's some things that I'm excited about, some things that I'm not. I feel the high of being a Denver sports fan in Chicago that was, the wild card game last year has certainly dropped off a little bit. Dropped off a lot. It's dropped off a lot.
I was at the game last night with my dad, and it was painful the whole time. And then Desmond hit that homer, and they were tied, and then they completely fell apart. And it was, in most ways, worse than if they'd just lost.
I agree. I was lucky enough to start. I started watching last night in the seventh inning, so I feel like I got the whole experience just in those 3 innings right there of what Rockies are in general. But I think that's it hurts so much more because of how consistent it has been in terms of 1 step forward, 2 steps back. And I think you're starting to see that mental. To me, as a fan, I'm getting that mental whiplash, and I'm starting to, it's been hard for me mentally. So I can only imagine what it's like for the players.
Yeah, and I mean, this weekend was just so crazy with you have the game Friday, they won, and then Saturday was the rain delay where the game didn't even start until after 9. It went until 1:10 in the morning, which was 12 hours before they had to start their game the next day. And then you have the doubleheader, and in the first game of the doubleheader, you give up 19 runs to the Giants, and then lose the second game of the doubleheader, which, statistically, you're supposed to split doubleheaders. Like, especially, this has been less true the last, 15 years, but it used to be, like, clockwork that most of the time you'd split doubleheaders, and you lose both games of the doubleheader, and then you lose last night. I think they're 4 and 8 in their last 12 at home. And they also got swept by the Diamondbacks in there. So on the road. So that's been their record. And then the last 10, they're 2 and 8.
Yeah, it's not gonna. That's when the summer rolls in, if that's what you're doing, you're gonna have a short summer. That's it.
One thing that's been so frustrating for me is that if they'd had anywhere near the level of hitting that they had last year, I feel like they would have won the division and, maybe not lost, like it gotten swept and not scored more than a run in the not the division, the first series, whatever those are called.
I 100% agree. Divisional round?
Yeah, I guess division series, yeah.
I 100% agree. And I think that's been the frustrating thing, too, as a fan, especially a fan not in the city, not, gauging the pulse right there of, Coors Field bias, whatever, which is its own thing. This is a playoff caliber offense that that I think is just even, getting mentally exhausted at the aspect of 162 game season is you have to have eventually games where you can feel you can relax a little bit. And I feel like with the Rockies thing, there's been times where, we've won 10-9. We've literally been up, 10-2. But because of what the pitching struggles have been, you can't even relax, because eventually it becomes 10-9. And I feel like that wear of no lead ever being safe enough, the stress of having to put on as many runs as possible early to even have a chance. I feel like that is starting to wane on. It's waning on me as a fan, and so I'm imagining it's waning on the players, including the offense, which is good enough.
It's at least better than this.
Yes.
And I'm sure you've seen this just watching the games from afar, but the way and all of the complaining about how the baseball is different, it's definitely traveling further at Coors Field than it's traveling anywhere else. But even with that, the pitching has just been abysmal. And I think that it's two problems. The baseball is definitely traveling further, and I think it's traveling further at Coors Field than it is other places because these scores, Like these were the scores we grew up with in the 90s before they
Yeah.
turned on the humidor. And it's like they turned off the humidor, but I think it's mainly just the baseball. And there was a great piece in The Athletic a couple weeks ago. Basically, this whole podcast is just me saying there was a great piece in The Athletic now. I think I did it twice on the last podcast about how they were looking at the different balls and what's this baseball, the laces are thicker, like so they go out further on the ball, but they're also flatter. And so they think that that's part of the problem is that the ball is so flat that there's no friction when it's going through the air. And that's just a
Interesting.
killer at Coors Field. But on
Yeah,
top
because
of
the air's
that,
already thinner.
yeah, on top of that though, no one's even locating their pitches because you can only hit home runs if the ball is in a place where you can hit home runs, and that's what basically everyone except for Gray has done the last couple of times through. Where do you see any pitching help? Like, do you see any of these guys turning it around?
I could think that's kind of my biggest concern of everything is, the past couple years, I think the narrative had started to change a little bit in terms of like, you can be a pitcher at, I mean, literally, Kyle Freeland was fourth in the Cy Young last year voting, and arguably, I could say I think it should have been higher because of the Coors Field's bias not going towards pitchers, but you can't make a the Rockies have decided to go in the we develop pitchers, we don't sign them, we don't trade for them. Um, and the thing that I'm scared about what this season has done is why, if I was ever a free agent pitcher, reliever, starter, would I ever want to come to Colorado? Um, and that's kind of the thing that scares me the most. And I think some of the guys will turn it around, can turn it around. They have while limited track records that show that. But it's just baseball's hard. You cannot develop a team that is only pitching based on your development. Eventually, you need to trade for somebody. Eventually, you need to sign somebody. They tried signing the relievers, and it obviously didn't work out. And I think the only way if this trend continues, Colorado will never get people, or they will have to overpay such an exorbitant amount that it could be detrimental to building the rest of the team.
Well, and we've seen that they had to overpay for their bullpen arms. I mean, the amount of money that they have committed to McGee, Davis, and Shaw is crazy. And, last night, McGee was the best of the three. Well, he wasn't really the best of the three. He gave up 2 hits, but he didn't give up a run. And then Davis came in and completely blew the game in extra innings. He only made it 1/3 of an inning before Shaw came in. They literally used, I think, almost every pitcher last night in a game where Lambert went 6 innings and only gave up 2 runs.
Yeah, it's not. Do you see any of like, I guess also the question is, are the Rockies going to be buyers or sellers at the trade market? It's obvious they need pitching help, but can they get it? Could you, I was wondering today of would there be anybody that would be interested in taking any of these relievers? That I was glancing at their home road splits, and they are as they are. Most of their road splits are sub 3 ERAs, sometimes even less than that. They have big contracts, but do you think that's something that? Because I was thinking, who would the Rockies even sell? Who's even that they would get good value for? Is that something that you think is worth? The pitching's not working anyway. Do you want to sell some of these relievers and just see what happens?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they should sell them and even be willing to take some of the money. Like if they can get someone to take Davis, I think they owe him $17 million next year. If they can get someone to
Mm-hmm.
take him and be like, "We'll pay 5 million of that," like that's worth it. But I don't know what the scouts are thinking. And coming out of the All-Star break, my concern was that Bridich wasn't going to make trades to try to make this team competitive. But they're spiraling so far down that if they don't at least go 500 on this next road trip, it's over. Like they cannot compete. And I think that is so frustrating. Thinking about value just as people on the team, like they're not going to trade Arenado, so he doesn't have value. You hope that
Mm-hmm.
they're not going to trade Story just in that they think they're going to be able to sign him. And then I think Dahl and Tapia are safe. Like I don't think they'll trade them. I don't think they'll trade McMahon. the only person that I see that actually has value right now is Blackman. Do you
Mm.
trade him and just basically say we're giving up on that? And I don't know exactly what his trade value would be considering he's a little older and he does have the contract he has. But right now, you look at that, and then on the other side, they could probably trade Gray, but that would be a huge mistake.
Yeah,
And,
yeah,
I think teams would take Marquez and Freeland, but you can't give up on that. And then no one else really has value other than as a prospect. Maybe just because he's pitched well a couple times, someone would take Chichi Gonzalez. Uh,
yeah,
but
yeah.
but again, like there's no one on this roster right now where you feel like they're going to completely change. There isn't a trade where you're going to get prospects that are going to be great, and I think that is so hard. And it is really before this weekend. My thought was, is it worth trading for pitching, knowing how bad things are going at Coors Field, or you just wait it out? And now it's turned into I'm not. I mean, they're turning into sellers so fast. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know if you looked at the updated wild card standings, but I'm going to go through them real quick because it's so
Oh
much
boy.
fun. So, in the first wild card spot, Washington is 50 and 43,
Oh, okay.
and Philadelphia is 49 and 46 in the second spot. Then you go down. Milwaukee is 49 and 47. St. Louis is 47 and 46. And Arizona is 48 and 47. And the good news for the Rockies is they've actually moved up in the wild card standings this weekend because other teams have been bad. And that ends the teams above 500 in the National League, along with 3 division winners. Then the Rockies and Giants are tied at 46 and 49. And then the Pirates and San Diego are tied at 45 and 49. And so all of those teams are still in the wild card conversation. And thanks to the Rockies' help, Cincinnati's only 43 and 49. Like they're not. The only difference is that haven't won 3 more games. They have the same. All of those teams have the same number of losses as the Rockies right now.
Yeah. I mean, hearing that, yes, you could say that the glass is half full is, oh, the Rockies are what, 3 back from the second wild card spot, essentially?
Yeah, 3 games back.
Which is obviously like, the sky is falling. Like that's obviously attainable. They have had this roller coaster of a season thus far, but realistically thinking about as it's getting hotter in the summer, which means Coors will be even crazier potentially. Like, yeah, it's hard to see justifying justifying selling some of your top prospects for something in that that probably won't help.
And I mean, at this point, it's hard to trust Bridich to make trades or sign players where you feel like they're making the team better because his
Yeah.
history just keeps getting worse and worse. I mean, and I want to talk to you about Daniel Murphy in a second anyway, but
Ugh.
the decision to sign Murphy over LeMahieu is just haunting the Rockies so badly. And it's not that Murphy's been bad. Like, he won Player of the Week last week. It's just LeMahieu's been so good. And Murphy, I don't know if you saw, Murphy came in, I'm sure you did. That last inning he played second base. He made a great second base play. Just on the one ball that came to him, he made a great second base play. And you're just like, why are the Rockies trying to fit him into first base when he's clearly not a first baseman? He just looks lost every time a ball comes to him. There was a play, I think, in the 8th inning where the ball came to him and he held it up like, I got it, guys, don't worry, as he was running to the base, not even to like warn people that he could have held up his glove, but he literally held up the ball. And I mean, the reliever signings have been bad. They really have brought in almost no one. Reynolds has been their best free agent that they've brought in 3 times now, and this has been the worst time they've brought him in. But he's played, everyday minutes at first base, and I don't understand the Rockies' first base strategy. I don't hear of other teams being like, we have such a hole at first base, we have to throw anyone there, and that's basically been the Rockies' strategy for the last 3 to 4 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Like Murphy is, if you just look at, what is it? It was 2 years, 24 million, I think, what he was signed for.
Yeah.
Like that by itself is not a bad signing, and he has not been a bad player by any means. But like, you know, also knowing that DJ was also 2 for 24, like you wish you could have both of them. You wish you could, if you're gonna do, I mean, it's pretty crazy to think that Brian Shaw might be making as much, maybe more, maybe a tiny bit less. McGee and Shaw are making a similar amount to what DJ got from the Yankees. Like that's hard. That's a tough pill to swallow.
And I mean, a lot of people said DJ was the MVP of the American League in the first half. Like it wasn't even like I saw that more than once. Um, so I think, yeah, I mean, all of that is hard. We'll switch gears now. Do you have any more thoughts on the Rockies implosion?
Um, I think I'm still not willing to 100% give up. I think I'll, once August 1st comes, I think that will be the telltale sign of will we have a fun August or not. But I think more than anything, it has become a mental thing, and I don't know if you can mentally dig yourself out of it. I don't know if there's enough time anymore, but we'll have to see.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, I mean, there's only 3 games left in August after they go on this road trip, but so they have 3 at the Yankees, 4 at the Nationals, 3 at the Reds. If they don't go 5-5, I mean, I guess they could go 4-6, but if they do anything worse than that, it's over before they even come home.
Yeah.
Um, so the thing I haven't told you this, um, and I think you will enjoy it, but I have started calling Daniel Murphy Star-Lord. And the
Okay.
reason for this is I don't know if you've noticed this, but he looks a lot like Chris Pratt.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Notice. Yes. He looks like Chris Pratt during Parks and Rec, like before he got buff.
Yes, exactly. But the other great thing about it is his mannerisms are just so ridiculous on the field all of the time. And for those who haven't seen any of the Guardians of the Galaxy, Star-Lord is like Chris Pratt's character is like fake name that he gives himself when he like thinks he's being cool and then he isn't the whole time. And so I've just started calling him Star-Lord, and it's just so much fun to watch him just pretend that Chris Pratt is on the Rockies. And he's just like did you see a couple weeks ago he missed home plate and then he had to like dive back and grab it?
I didn't.
Oh, I'll have to find that GIF. I would highly recommend it to everybody. I'll put it again on my Twitter at some point this week at Derek in Denver. But he just everything he does is just so goofy. Like they were down 4 runs last night, and he was at second base, and he was like trying to corral everybody into position. Even though no one cared at that point, it was after Nolan had made his error. Like the game was over, and he was still just like, "Oh, here we go." And he just gets so mad when he makes an error, and it's just great. Like there are definitely some problems with Daniel Murphy, but being able to watch him on the field and just pretend that he's Chris Pratt has been my favorite part of the season so far.
Great. That's good. So that we have that no matter what, we hopefully have this to look forward to for the next couple months.
And I don't know if you saw last night, but we have it to look forward to because Brendan Rodgers is out for the
Yep,
season.
I did see that.
So no even looking at the top young prospect the rest of the year. So switching to another fun topic, Broncos training camp starts Thursday tomorrow because they're playing the Hall of
Oh,
Fame game.
oh, that's right. Oy.
I know you're our Chicago reporter who is actually just a Denver fan, but any thoughts on Vic Fangio coming from being in Chicago as he gets ready to start his first training camp? And you can just say no, I
Um,
have no thoughts.
I mean, there's a few thoughts. There's not that many. I do know that like Chicago people liked him.
Which is hard.
And
That isn't like a
yes,
given. You have to earn
yes.
being liked in Chicago.
I'm interested in knowing what, you know, because even as I do a good job paying attention, because I like to, what the sports pulse feels like, when I'm away from Denver. Um, the Broncos still seem like, not as prevalent as, I grew up them used to being, and they're not as prevalent as they are in my mind. So, I mean, my first question to you is what normally the start of Broncos training camp is, essentially a national state holiday in Colorado. Does it still feel like that?
I mean, I think the really diehards are trying to drum that up again. I think that it's just no one really knows what this team's going to be, and I think that that is causing a lot of people to just step back and be like, what exactly are we getting? We don't know. The Joe Flacco thing, it hasn't been spoken about like a lot, but I mean, Denver doesn't really like Joe Flacco. He cost the
Mm-hmm.
team a trip to the Super Bowl with that one game. And so
Mm-hmm.
no one's really that excited about it, but everyone also knows that he's going to be the guy. Like Drew Lock is not going to be the quarterback this year unless the season's over. And that I think is worrying people. The thing that I have continued to repeat is if you think that Vance Joseph cost them 2 games last year, they were an 8-8 team last year. And I think that he cost him 2 games. Like his coaching was bad enough that there were 2 games they could have won. There were also a
Yeah.
couple lucky ones, like the Pittsburgh game. They shouldn't have won that game. So I'm not saying that there isn't luck both ways, but if you think that Vic Fangio is at least 2 games better than Vance Joseph, they're an 8-8 team last year. What do they look like? And I could see them going anywhere from a 3-13 team to, I mean, a 10-6. I don't really see, but I guess it's possible. And
Yeah.
I just think the fact that there's so much variation in there is causing a lot of people to take pause. I mean, it's been a weird summer. Pat Bowlen passing away was hard for the city.
Yeah.
I think everyone is sort of in a holding pattern with Elway. Um, the defense, they brought Chris Harris Jr. back for this year, but no one's really exactly sure what that defense looks like. The offensive line is a continual mess still. I I mean the hope is, the rookie receivers from last year are going to develop and Lindsey's going to be able to play as well as he did and we're going to get something from Royce Freeman. So if all of those things
Because
go well,
Sanders, is he what? How is his recovery? Is he supposed to start the season or?
so he's been posting videos on Instagram like he's going to start the season or at least start training camp. But I think there's some thought that if healthy, they may try to trade him.
Mm.
Um, so I think there's been a lot of pause, and I don't know if you picked up on this over the last couple of weeks, but the anticipation for training camp was so bad that iHeartRadio got rid of Orange and Blue 760 before training camp started, which is just
Wow.
unbelievable. Like they kept it. I think last week was the first week where they didn't have any anymore. They're creating an all conservative talk station and moving Rush Limbaugh off of KOA, which is crazy. Um, and they're going to try to make KOA kind of the Broncos stop. They signed Alfred Williams away from the Fan, and he's going to start an afternoon show. And then Dave Logan's going to be on in Rush Limbaugh's old time slot, which is weird, along with Rick Lewis. So they're sort of trying to revamp KOA as the Broncos station, but they had an all Broncos all the time station that they got rid of, which is kind of unheard of considering that the Super Bowl was 3 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, that kind of stems to thoughts that I have had myself as a fan, as a sports fan, that I wonder if they're, you know, the to me the question of football in its kind of generic decline in terms of popularity, even.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, especially our age and younger, like it's hard to think about all of the head injuries. And I mean, I think
Yes.
of all of the teams that will be able to survive that, it's the Broncos, but it's also just because you don't get to decide to be a Broncos fan in Denver. Like it is part of
Yes.
growing up in Denver. People that we know that
Yes.
don't care at all about sports still care about the Broncos as like a city pride identity. And so from that standpoint, like the Broncos will be fine, but I do think that, these questions it's harder to watch a bad team and also know all of the problems with it. And
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
yes.
we haven't watched a team that wasn't interesting since 2011, which was the Tebow year. I mean, that team was interesting. It was terrible football, but it was
But
interesting.
yeah, yeah,
And I mean, to come into this year and just be like, if they go 3-13, that's not a surprise, and the season could be over. It's definitely a possibility.
yeah. I think the the I when you said I can relate a lot to the when football it's an interesting thing because I there's nothing like the aspect that it's only a 16 game season truly makes every game more meaningful than any of the other professional sports. Um, and that, but to watch a bad football team, kind of knowing what we know is hard. It has gotten hard for me. If it's good and it's fun, my mind can just enjoy the athletic accomplishments and kind of put that a little bit aside. But it has been getting increasingly hard to watch a when it's not like that. So I wonder if that will kind of be this topsy-turvy thing in terms of fandom a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I could definitely see it, and I think that that is one of the real questions that we have going forward with football and the Broncos. And I mean, maybe Drew Lock is the answer, but if he's not, the Broncos could be a mediocre to bad team for quite a long time now.
And even, I mean, I'm even concerned just of I remember that they were playing the Hall of Fame game, but I forgot until you said it, which means they have, what, 5 preseason games,
Yeah,
correct?
just
I mean, the whole team could be that as a fan, parts of me are excited to see young prospects, but like what the team is going to look like injury wise by the time the season starts I mean, the team could be half the starters could be gone.
yeah, or if not half the starters, half the reserves, just because they've already played 5 football games. Like I don't know what their plan is with the players, but none of it none of it is at at peak levels here. And I think, I mean, we've been dealing with it and sort of denying that we've been dealing with how bad the quarterbacks have been since Manning retired.
Hmm.
But I mean, it really has been more of an anomaly than the norm, where at least you felt like you had a guy since Elway. I mean, for a while people thought Greasy was the guy. He wasn't, and then they had Plummer, and then they had Cutler, and like just as a franchise, we haven't had long periods of time where we just haven't had a quarterback. And I mean, there's a possibility that Flacco, is the quarterback, and then he is bad, and then Locke's the quarterback, and he doesn't work, and there's just no end to this. Um, I mean, they're starting to look, more like the Browns in quarterbacks than they are the Broncos.
Yeah, in terms of the who's at first today,
Yeah. Uh, well,
or they're looking like the Rockies first baseman situation. There we
yeah,
go, bring
yeah.
it
There
full
you go.
circle.
Well, you said first base, so you made your point twice. Um, well, just because we haven't had you on, this is your first time on the podcast. Um, how are you feeling about the Nuggets after everything's sort of shaken out over the summer?
Um, it's weird to say this out loud to think that I think the sports organization, I would even say maybe even a little bit above the Avs, the one that I feel like has the most, at least a plan that you can see what their plan is, and it feels like it has a chance. You might not agree with it, but if it like they feel like weirdly the best run sports organization in Denver right now
Yeah, I
to
mean,
me,
I
which is very odd.
I think you're completely right that it's the Avs and the Nuggets, and Kroenke is just running laps around Bridich and Elway as far as how his GMs are doing. Um, Building young, trusting that process. And then, I mean, the Nuggets continue to have interest in the fact that they got Bull where he's, a guy that we could be interested in next year. And they didn't even have a first round pick this year, and they won't have one next year, and they still made it interesting, which is what you want. Question for you: did you have any thoughts about Jeremy Grant as a player before he was traded to the Nuggets?
It is pretty funny because, like he's traded and everybody's like, he's like, there's efficiency ratings in which he was like the fifth best, power forward in the entire NBA. I kind of, this is me completely honest. I remembered him only because he had a kind of weird hairstyle where he had like, he had braids, but they were like a funny they kind of looked like D'Angelo,
Henderson?
Yeah, yes,
the Bronco?
Mark? No, why can't I get the who was just traded to Golden State?
Oh, Russell.
Yes, it kind of looks. It was a similar hairstyle to that, and I remember. That's kind of more I remember. I remember his changing hairstyle over the years, at Oklahoma City, more than his level as a player. But I've done my research after it, and yeah, it seems exciting. But to be honest, that was my first thing. I was like, oh yeah, Jeremy Grant, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I knew of him. I think it must, and I don't know this for sure, but I feel like this must be like Zach Lowe was really high on him, and so everyone else got really high on him, or something like that. Like, I feel like there were smart basketball people that really loved him, and so everyone just sort of jumped on the bandwagon. But, I think, at least in the ESPN Power Rankings, it moved the Nuggets into number 2 as the second best team.
That.
And it's just like, it's crazy. I really hope they're right. Like, it's, exactly what they needed, because one of the problems in the playoffs was that they had 3 big guys. They had Millsap, Plumlee, and Jokic, and Plumlee was basically unplayable the second half of the Trailblazers series. Yep. And they couldn't play Lyles, they couldn't play Hernan Gomez, and they were just a mess. And this fits in there where they would have 4 guys now, and Grant can apparently play center sometimes too if he needs to. And, they have a lot of big guys like Vanderbilt, not in the Summer League game that Quinn and I went to, but the other ones had a really good, he's going to sign. They think they're going to sign Chanchar. And then, you have Bull waiting in the wings, so they have guys. So, yeah, I mean, I'm ready for October. I'm ready to see how the Avs look as a little younger and less experienced team than last year. And then just see where the Nuggets are, see who's taking the steps forward and what they look like if they can stay healthy. So that's sort of where we are. The other thing that I gotta get somebody on at some point to talk about the Buffs, because we just have no idea what's going on with the football team, and that's coming up pretty fast.
I have no idea. Yep.
I think their over/under was 3.5. I saw somewhere.
Nice.
So that's
nice.
There's a chance that there aren't 10 wins between the Broncos and the Buffs this year.
Well, I guess then this is the win. Who has more? I think the Broncos will get more wins than the Buffs. This is my hot take right there.
How about higher winning percentage though? Because they have 4 more games.
I think I'm still gonna take the Broncos, but that is a little, the Buffs could, win 4 out of their first 5 and then lose all the other ones, and they could still be better than a 6-10 Broncos team. So,
that's
but
true.
I'm still gonna say the Broncos.
I mean, that's basically what happened last year. So
yeah,
although they might have only won 5 games. I can't remember. I'm trying to forget the whole season last year because it was so bad. Well, any more thoughts from Chicago to Denver before we let you go?
No, I'll just say it's very humid and hot. I think tomorrow it's supposed to be 97 degrees, and this is not a Denver 97 degrees. It's gonna feel like it's like 110. It's not gonna cool down at night, so just please wish me well. We're gonna try and sleep.
I'm pretty sure tomorrow it's gonna be 100 here. So
I would still take
competing.
100 there than 97 here. That humidity is gross.
Also, I promised I would do this since this was the only way we could get you on the show. Do you want to promote your new jazz venture?
Well, okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you're ever in Chicago, you know, this voice you're hearing does more than just speak nonsense about sports. I play piano and sometimes sing. And I have a group called Treble on the L. We're playing around Chicago. Next gig's next week. And we have a website. You can look it up by that name and learn more about us.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for having me.